Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 999th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the slave of the seal ring took up Ma'aruf and cast him down in the desert quarter, where he left him and went his ways. So much concerning him. But returning to the Wazir, who was now in possession of the talisman, he said to the king, 'How deemest thou now? Did I not tell thee that this fellow was a liar and an impostor? But thou wouldest not credit me.' Replied the king, 'Thou wast in the right, O my Wazir. Allah grant thee weal. But give me the ring, that I may solace myself with the sight.' The minister looked at him angrily and spat in his face, saying, 'O lackwits, how shall I give it to thee? I buy thy servant after I become thy master. But I will spare thee no more on life.' Then he rubbed the seal ring and said to the slave, 'Take up this ill-mannered churl, cast him down by his son-in-law, the swindler man.' So the Jinni took him up and flew off with him, whereupon quoth the king to him, 'O creature of my lord, what is my crime?' Abu al-Sadat replied, 'That wot I not, but my master hath commanded me, and I cannot cross whoso hath encompassed the enchanted ring.' Then he flew on with him till he came to the desert quarter, and casting him down where he had cast Ma'aruf, left him and returned. The king, hearing Ma'aruf weeping, went up to him and acquainted him with his case, and they sat weeping over that which had befallen them, and found neither meat nor drink. Meanwhile, the minister, after driving father-in-law and son-in-law from the country, went forth from the garden, and summoning all the troops, held a divan, and told them that he had done with the king and Ma'aruf, and acquainted them with the affair of the talisman, adding, 'Unless you make me sultan over you, I will bid the slave of the seal ring take you up one and all, and cast you down in the desert quarter, where you shall die of hunger and thirst.' They replied, 'Do us no damage, for we accept thee as sultan over us, and will not any way gainsay thy bidding.' So they agreed in their own despite to his being sultan over them, and he bestowed on them robes of honor, seeking all he had a mind of from Abu al-Sadat, who brung it to him forthright. Then he sat down on the throne, and troops did homage to him, and he sent to Princess Dunya, the king's daughter, saying, 'Make thee ready, for I mean to come in unto thee this night, because I long for thee with love.' When she heard this, she wept, for the case of her husband and father was grievous to her, and sent to him, saying, 'Have patience with me till my period of widowhood be ended. Then draw up thy contract of marriage, and go unto me according to law.' But he sent back to her to say, 'I know neither period of widowhood, nor to delay have I a mood, and I need not a contract, nor know I lawful from unlawful, but needs must I go in unto thee this night.' She answered him, saying, 'So be it then, and welcome to thee.' But this was a trick on her part. When the answer reached the Wazir, he rejoiced, and his breast was broadened, for that he was passionately in love with her. He bade set food before all the folk, saying, 'Eat, this is a bride feast, for I propose to go into the Princess Dunya this night.' Quoth the Shaykh al-Islam, 'It is not lawful for thee to go in unto her till her days of widowhood be ended, and thou have drawn up thy contract of marriage with her.' But he answered, 'I know neither days of widowhood nor other period, so multiply not words on me.' The Shaykh al-Islam was silent, fearing his mischief, and said to the troops, 'Verily, this man is a kafir, a miscreant, and hath neither creed nor religious conduct.' As soon as it was evenfall, he went in to her, and found her robed in her richest raiment, and decked with her goodliest adornments. When she saw him, she came to meet him, laughing, and said, 'O blessed night! But hast thou slain my father and my husband, it had been more to my mind.' And he said, 'There is no help but I slay them.' Then she made him sit down, and began to jest with him, and make show of love, caressing him, and smiling in his face, so that his reason fled. But she cajoled him with her coaxing and cunning, only that she might get possession of the ring, and change his joy into calamity on the mother of his forehead, Nor did she deal thus with him, but after the rede of him who said, I attained by my wits what no sword had obtained, and return with spoils whose sweet pluckings I gained. When he saw her caress him and smile upon him, desire surged up in him, and he besought her of carnal knowledge. But when he approached her, she drew away from him, and burst into tears, saying, O my lord, seest thou not the man looking at us? I conjure thee by Allah, screen me from his eyes. How canst thou know me, what while he looketh on us? When he heard this, he was angry, and asked, Where is the man? And answered she, There he is, in the bezel of the ring, putting out his head and staring at her. He thought that the Jinni was looking at them, and said, laughing, Fear not, this is the slave of the seal ring, and he is subject to me. Quoth she, I am afraid of ifrits. Pull it off and throw it away from me. So he plucked it off, and laying it on the cushion, drew near to her. But she dealt him a quick kick with her foot, striking him full in the stomach, and he fell over on his back, senseless. Whereupon she cried out to her attendants, who came to her in haste, and said to him, Seize him. So 40 slave girls laid hold on him, while she hurriedly snatched up the ring from the cushion and rubbed it. Whereupon Abu al-Sadat presented himself, saying, Adsum, at thy service, O my mistress. Cried she, Take up yonder infidel, and clap him in jail, and shackle him heavily. So he took him, and throwing him in the prison of wrath, returned and reported, I have laid him in limbo. Quoth she, Whither wentest thou with my father and my husband? And quoth he, I cast them down in the desert quarter. Then cried she, I command thee to fetch them to me forthright. He replied, I hear and obey. And taking flight at once, stayed not till he reached the desert quarter, where he lighted down upon them and found them sitting weeping and complaining to each other. Quoth he, Fear not, for relief is come to you. And he told them what the Wazir had done, adding, Indeed, I imprisoned him with my own hands in obedience to her, and she hath bidden me to bear you back. And they rejoiced in this news. Then he took them both up and flew home with them, nor was it more than an hour before he brought them to Princess Dunya, who rose and saluted sire and spouse. Then she made them sit down and brought them food and sweetmeats, and they passed the rest of the night with her. On the next day she clad them in rich clothing and said to the king, O my papa, sit down upon thy throne, and be the king as before, and make my husband thy Wazir of the right, and tell thy troops that which hath happened. Then send for the minister out of prison, and do him die, after burn him, for that he is a miscreant, and he would have gone in unto me in the way of lewdness without rights of wedlock, and he hath testified against himself that he is an infidel, and believeth in no religion. And do tenderly by thy son-in-law, whom thou madest thy Wazir of the right. He replied, Hearing and obeying, O my daughter. But do thou give me the ring, or give it to thy husband. Quoth she, It behoveth not that either thou or he have the ring. I will keep the ring myself, and belike I shall be more careful of it than you. Whatsoever ye wish, seek it of me, and I will demand it for you of the slave of the seal ring. So fear no harm so long as I live, and after my death do what ye twain with the ring. Quoth the king, This is the right rede, O my daughter. And taking his son-in-law, went forth to the divan. Now the troops had passed that night in sore chagrin for Princess Dunya, and that which the Wazir had done with her, in going to her after the ways of lewdness, without marriage rights, for his ill usage of the king and Ma'aruf, and they feared lest the law of all Islam be dishonored, because it was manifest to him that he was a kafir. So they assembled in the divan, and fell to reproaching the Shaykh al-Islam, saying, Why dost thou not forbid him from going into the princess in the way of lewdness? Said he, O folk, the man is a miscreant, and hath gotten possession of the ring, and I and you may not prevail against him. But Almighty Allah will requite him his deed, and be ye silent, lest he slay you. And as the host was thus engaged in talk, behold, the king and Ma'aruf entered the divan. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 1000th night, she continued, it hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the troops, sorely chagrined, sat in the divan, talking over the ill deeds done by the Wazir to their sovereign, his son-in-law, and his daughter, behold, the king and Ma'aruf entered. Then the king bade decorate the city, and sent to fetch the Wazir from the place of duress. So they brought him, and as he passed by the troops, they cursed him, and abused him, and menaced him, till he came to the king, who commanded to do him dead by the vilest of deaths. Accordingly they slew him, and after they burned his body, and he went to hell after the foulest of plights. And right well quoth one of them, the compassionate show no ruth to the tomb where his bones shall lie, and Munkar and Nakir ne'er cease to abide thereby. The king made Ma'aruf his Wazir of the right, and the times were pleasant to them, and their joys were untroubled. They abode thus 5 years, till in the 6th year the king died, and Princess Dunya made Ma'aruf Sultan in her father's stead, but she gave him not the seal ring. During this time she had conceived to him and borne him a boy of passing loveliness, excelling in beauty and perfection, who ceased not to be reared in the laps of nurses till he reached the age of 5, when his mother fell sick of a deadly sickness, and calling her husband to her, said to him, I am ill. Quoth he, Allah preserve thee, O dearling of my heart. But quoth she, haply I shall die, and thou needest not that I commend to thee the care of our son. Wherefore I charge thee, but be careful of the ring, for thine own sake, and for the sake of this thy boy. And he answered, no harm shall befall him, whom Allah preserveth. Then she pulled off the ring and gave it to him, and on the morrow she was admitted to the mercy of Allah the Most High, whilst Ma'aruf abode in possession of the kingship, and applied himself to the business of governing. Now it chanced that one day, as he shook the handkerchief, and the troops withdrew to their places, that he betook himself to the sitting chamber, where he sat till the day departed, and the night advanced with murks bedight. Then came into him his cup companions of the notables, according to their custom, and sat with him by way of solace and diversion till midnight, when they craved permission to withdraw. He gave them leave, and they retired to their houses, after which came in to him a slave girl, affected to the service of his bed, who spread him the mattress, and doffing his apparel, clad him in sleeping gown. Then he lay down, and she kneaded his feet, till sleep overpowered him, whereupon she withdrew to her own chamber and slept. But suddenly he felt something beside him in the bed, and awaking started up in alarm, and cried, I seek refuge from Allah, from Satan the stone. Then he opened his eyes, and seeing by his side a woman foul of favour, said to her, Who art thou? Said she, Fear not, I am thy wife, Fatimah Ma'aruf. Whereupon he looked on her face, and knew her by the loathly form and the length of her dog teeth. So he asked her, Where camest thou into me, and who brought thee into this country? In what country art thou at this present? And he said, In the city of Itakin al-Kutan. But thou, when didst thou leave Cairo? But now? How can that be? Know, said she, that when I fell out with thee, and Satan prompted me to do thee a damage, I complained of thee to the magistrates, who sought for thee. And the Qazis inquired of thee, but found thee not. When 2 days were past, repentance gat hold of me, and I knew that the fault was with me. But penitence availed me not, and I abode for some days weeping for thy loss, till what was in my hand failed, and I was obliged to beg my bread. So I fell to begging of all, from the courted rich to the condemned poor, and since thou leftest me, I have eaten of the bitterness of beggary, and have been in the sorriest of conditions. Every night I sat beweeping our separation, and that which I suffered since the departure of humiliation, in abjection and misery. And she went on to tell him what had befallen her, whilst he stared at her in amazement, till she said, Yesterday I went about begging all day, but none gave me aught. And as often as I accosted anyone and craved of him a crust of bread, he reviled me and gave me naught. When night came, I went to bed supperless and hungry, and it burned within me and sore on me that I suffered. And I sat weeping, when behold, one appeared to me and said, O woman, why weepest thou? Said I, Erst I had a husband who used to provide for me and fulfill my wishes, but he is lost to me, and I know not whither he went, and have been in sore straits since he left me. Asked he, What is thy husband's name? And I answered, His name is Ma'aruf. Quoth he, I ken him. Know that thy husband is now Sultan in a certain city, and if thou wilt, I will carry thee to him. Cried I am under the protection of thy bounty, bring me to him. So he took me up, and he flew with me between heaven and earth, till he brought me to this pavilion, and said to me, Enter yonder chamber, and thou shalt see thy husband asleep on the couch. Accordingly I entered, and found thee in this state of lordship. Indeed, I had not thought thou wouldst forsake me, who am thy mate, and praised be Allah, who hath united me with thee. Quoth Ma'aruf, Did I forsake thee, or thou me? Thou complainest of me from Kazi to Kazi, and endest by denouncing me to the high council, and bringing down on me Abu Tabak from the citadel. So I fled in my own despite. And he went on to tell her all that had befallen him, and how he had become sultan, and had married the king's daughter, and how his beloved Dunya had died, leaving him a son, who was now 7 years old. She rejoined, That which happened was foreordained of Allah, but I repent me, and I place myself under thy protection, beseeching thee not to abandon me, but suffer me eat bread and thee by way of an alms. And she ceased not to humble herself to him, and to supplicate him, till his heart relented towards her, and said, Repent from mischief, and abide with me, and naught shall betide thee, save what shall pleasure thee. But an thou work any wickedness, I will slay thee, nor fear anyone. And fancy not that thou canst complain of me to the high court, and that Abu Tabak will come down on me from the citadel. For I am become sultan, and the folk dread me. But I fear none save Allah Almighty, because I have a talismanic ring, which when I rub the slave of the signet appears to me. His name is Abu al-Sadat, and whatsoever I demand of him he bringeth to me. So an thou desire to return to thine own country, I will give thee what shall suffice thee all thy life long, and will send thee hither speedily. But an thou desire to abide with me, I will clear for thee a palace, and furnish it with the choicest of silks, and appoint thee 20 slave girls to serve thee, and provide thee with dainty dishes and sumptuous suits, and thou shalt be a queen, and live in all delight till thou die, or I die. What sayest thou of this? I wish to abide with thee, she answered, and kissed his hand, and vowed repentance from frowardness. Accordingly, he set apart a palace for her sole use, and gave her slave girls and eunuchs, and she became a queen. The young prince used to visit her as he visited his sire, but she hated him, for that he was not her son. And when the boy saw that she looked on him with the eye of aversion and anger, he shunned her, and took a dislike to her. As for Ma'aruf, he occupied himself with the love of fair handmaids, and bethought him not of his wife Fatimah the dung, for that she was grown a grizzled old fright, foul favour to the sight, a bald-headed blight, loathlier than the snake speckled black and white. The more that she had beyond measure evil entreated him aforetime, and as saith the adage, ill usage, the root of desire disparts, and sows hate in the soils of hearts, and God-gifted is he who saith, Beware of losing hearts of men by thine injurious deed, for when aversion takes his place, none may dear love restore. Hearts, when affection flies from them, are like us unto glass, which broken cannot whole be made, 'tis breached for evermore. And indeed, Ma'aruf had not given her shelter by reason of any praiseworthy quality in her, but he dealt with her thus generously only of desire for the approval of Allah Almighty. Here Dunyazad interrupted her sister Scheherazade, saying, How winsome are these words of thine, which win hold of the heart more forcibly than enchanter's eye, and how beautiful are these wondrous books thou hast cited, and the marvellous and singular tales thou hast recited. Quoth Scheherazade, And where is all this compared with that which I shall relate to thee on the coming night? And I live, and the king deign spare my days. So when morning morrowed, and the day brake in its sheen and shone, the king arose from his couch, with breasts broadened, and in high expectation for the rest of the tale, saying, By Allah, I will not slay her till I hear the last of her story. Repaired to his durbar, while the Wazir, as was his wont, presented himself with the palace, shroud under arm. Shahryar tarried abroad all that day, bidding and forbidding between man and man, after which he returned to his harem, and according to his custom, went in to his wife, Scheherazade. Now, when it was the 1001st night, Dunyazad said to her sister, Do thou finish for us the history of Ma'aruf. She replied, With love and goodly gree, as my lord deign permit me recount it. Quoth the king, I permit thee, for that I am fain of hearing it. So she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Ma'aruf would have naught to do with his wife by the way of conjunctual duty. Now, when she saw that he held aloof from her bed and occupied himself with other women, she hated him, and jealousy got the mastery of her, and Iblis prompted her to take the seal ring from him and slay him, and make herself queen in his stead. So she went forth one night from her pavilion, intending for that in which was her husband King Ma'aruf. And it chanced by decree of the decreer and his written destiny that Ma'aruf lay that night with one of his concubines, a damsel endowed with beauty and loveliness, symmetry, and a stature all grace. And it was his wont of the excellence of his piety that when he was minded to have to lie with a woman, he would doff the enchanted seal ring from his finger in reverence to the holy names graven thereon and laid on the pillow, nor would he don it again till he had purified himself by the ghoul's ablution. Moreover, when he had laid with a woman, he was used to order her go forth from him before daybreak of his fear for the seal ring. And when he went to the hammam, he locked the door of the pavilion till his return, when he put on the ring, and after this all were free to enter according to custom. His wife Fatimah the Dung knew all of this, and went not forth from her place till she had certified herself of the case. So she sallied out when the night was dark, proposing to go in to him whilst he was drowned in sleep, and steal the ring unseen of him. Now it chanced at this time that the king's son had gone out without light to the chapel of ease for an occasion, and sat down over the marble slab of the jakes in the dark, leaving the door open. Presently he saw Fatimah go forth of her pavilion, and making stealthily for that of his father's, and said in himself, What aileth this witch to leave her lodging in the dead of night, and make for my father's pavilion? Needs must there be a reason for this. So he went after her, and he followed on her steps, unseen of her. Now he had a short sword of watered steel, which he held so dear that he went not to his father's divan, except he were girt therewith. And his father used to laugh at him and exclaim, Mahala, this is a mighty fine sword of thine, O my son, but thou hast not gone down with it to battle, nor cut off a head therewith. Whereupon the boy would reply, I will not fail to cut off with it some head which deserveth cutting. And Ma'aruf would laugh at his words. Now, when treading in her track, he drew the sword from its sheath, and he followed her till she came to her father's pavilion, and entered, whilst he stood and watched her from the door. He saw her searching about, and heard her say to herself, Where hath he laid the seal ring? Whereby he knew what she was looking for, and he waited till she found it, and said, Here it is. Then she picked it up and turned to go out, but he hid behind the door. As she came forth, she looked at the ring and turned it about in her grasp. But when she was about to rub it, he raised his hand with the sword and smote her on the neck, and she cried a single cry and fell down dead. With this, Ma'aruf awoke, and seeing his wife strown on the ground with her blood flowing, and his son standing with the drawn sword in his hand, said to him, What is this, O my son? He replied, O my father, How often hast thou said to me, Thou hast a mighty fine sword, but thou hast not gone down with it to battle nor cut off a head. And I have answered thee, saying, I will fail to cut off with its head which deserveth cutting. And now, behold, I have therewith cut off for thee a head well worth the cutting. And he told him what had passed. And Ma'aruf sought for the seal ring, but found it not. So he searched the dead woman's body till he found her hand closed upon it. Whereupon he took it from her grasp, and said to the boy, Thou art indeed my very son, without doubt or dispute. Allah ease thee in this world and the next, even as thou hast eased me of this vile woman. Her attempt led only to her own destruction, and Allah gifted is he who said, When forwards Allah's aid a man's intent, his wish is every case shall find consent. But an that aid of Allah be refused, his first attempt shall do him damagement. Then King Ma'aruf called aloud to some of his attendants, who came in haste, and he told them what his wife Fatimah the Dung had done, and bade them to take her and lay her in a place till the morning. They did his bidding, and next day he gave her in charge to a number of eunuchs, who washed her, and shrouded her, and made her tomb and buried her. Thus her coming from Cairo was but to her grave, and Allah gifted is he who said, We trod the steps appointed for us, and he whose steps are appointed must tread them. He whose death is decreed to take place in our land shall not die in any land but that. And how excellent is the saying of the poet, I wot not, when as to a land I fare, good luck pursuing what my lot shall be, whether the fortune I perforce pursue, or the misfortune which pursueth me. After this, King Ma'aruf sent for the husbandman, whose guest he had been, when he was a fugitive, and made him his Wazir of the right, and his chief counsel. Then, learning that he had a daughter of passing beauty and loveliness of qualities, nature ennobled at birth, and exalted of worth, he took her to wife, and in due time he married his son. So they abode a while in all solace of life and its delight, and their days were serene and their joys untroubled, till there came to them the destroyer of delights, and the sunderer of societies, the depopulator of populous places, and the orphaner of sons and daughters. And glory be to the living, who dieth not, and in these hands are the keys of the seen and the unseen. And I finish for today, and cease to say my permitted say, till it be morrow, when we conclude our great adventure.